Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest McCann WeCann panel discussion. Last week, our creative leaders discussed communications in the world of coronavirus, and this week it's the turn of strategic planners and anthropologists to talk about brands and the meaningful role they can play in people's lives. My name is Bonner-Davies. I'm the president of Grupa, and I'm joined today by a truly fantastic panel. Firstly, we have Harjot Singh, who's the Chief Strategy Officer for McCann Worldgroup Europe, and Harj can bring a wealth of knowledge and experience from not just Europe, but also across the world to the debate. We have Lars Friberg, who is the Director of Strategic Planning in McCann Stockholm. And as many of you will know, Sweden has taken a different angle to most countries to manage this pandemic, and so it'll be interesting to see whether Swedish attitudes, consumer attitudes, are different to the rest of us. Katarina Pribićević, the head of strategic planning in McCann Belgrade. Many of you will know her, and she can give very much a local perspective from Serbia and across the Adriatic. And last but by no means least, Predrag Kurčubić.
Yeah,
Predrag is the managing director of Ipsos in Serbia, and he leads a team right across the Adriatic, interestingly, that are looking at society, markets, and people's attitudes. So this is the man with all the data, as well as the cool hair. So guys, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We will chat for the next 40 minutes, and then we'll open up the discussion to those of you listening to answer some questions. So the box on the right of your screen, feel free to type in a question that we can talk about as a panel, and we will for sure be done before the end of the hour. So let's get into this. We've all read in the last 6 weeks hundreds of articles and points of view on brands and marketing during this COVID time. The discussion we're going to have today is what happens after perhaps this first phase of the pandemic. How do brands need to adapt? How do they need to evolve? And how do brands find their meaningful role in a world that's turned upside down? And I say upside down because a few of us at the Grupa wrote and published a white paper last week, and we talked exactly about this. As a visual metaphor, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a good guide. And we believe that his hierarchy of needs is today flipped on its head, on its axis. We believe that consumers have dropped and will drop from the aspirational self-actualization and esteem needs and focus on the fundamental basics of safety, security, family, and food. And brands need to adopt today to this new reality, the new reality that their customers find themselves in. So, as an introductory question, I guess I should ask you all, do you agree with this? What are you seeing in your capacity as professional observers? And maybe Katja, as you are my co-author of the piece, you can kick us off.
Let me just unmute myself. First of all, hi to everyone listening, watching. Yes, I think this was one of the first things that we noted, you know, like the basic needs. It's like we've experienced kind of a regression, you know, but it's only natural since we are closed and focused on each other, on ourselves. And I completely agree with this point where self-actualization, which is something that brands just like a few months ago were trying to answer the need of people to, you know, improve themselves in different ways to progress. And now everything changed so quickly. For me, this was one of the most impressive things, how quickly needs changed, and how we started being focused on something that was just taken for granted, or just the thing that I'm interested in is how many of those things will stay with us in the future, in this next future. For I don't know, this when you say safety now, I think for me personally is okay, your health safety, so you are like sanitizing and things like that, and I'm wondering, will all the things that make our life richer, more interesting, nicer, the things that we long for today, people long for today, will they be changed in this first time going out or traveling? You know, I think that we are very eager, you know, to grab all those opportunities as soon as we can, you know, to make our lives at least a little bit more interesting than right now. And then I guess what of those needs or what of those basic things will stick with us in this near future? Will we have like sanitized travel? How the schools are going to, you know, I mean, today, I guess in all the countries, everyone is talking about these new measurements, which will be less strict. And I think that we are all trying to imagine how this will look like. Kindergartens are going to start working, maybe schools, maybe we will actually travel to, I don't know, Greece or something. How this is going to look, and will this and how long it will last. So it's a very personal you know, like thing, but I think that our brands, that's why we are here and discussing, will, you know, have to have all this in mind, and probably like some of those change so quickly and transform the way they work, they think, they answer the needs. I guess that they will also have to be very quick, much quicker than they thought they would have been. In like 2 weeks time, you know, everything will change. I don't know if I think this is not characteristic only for this part of market. I think this is the global thing. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Predrag, I mean, you professionally track consumer behavior and consumer changes. Do you think this is going to last longer than the sort of 2 weeks that Katja is talking about?
Well, this is the anecdote. I was riding a bike yesterday on Ada Ciganlija, and I could see that there are some changes that happened immediately after government mentioned about the possibility to change some of those strict measures that are now in place. So my feeling was yesterday when I was driving by, because no one had a mask, it was like full of people, and people were just walking, talking, and I was thinking, oh wow, I mean, people moved back and changed their behavior to the previous one much quicker than I thought. And then I was thinking about today's conversation and trying to explain what's going on, and definitely all the data shows that safety is now a need number one. We can call it safety, we can call it health, whatever it is. People are worried about the health, and not only about themselves, about the family, parents, kids, and all others. But my feeling is that also they are strictly listening the recommendations, most of them, and of course, people have other needs. Maybe, as you said, the hierarchy changed a bit, but needs are still there. And at the moment, we're all trying to satisfy those basic needs. And we did everything, most of us did everything what was asked to do. Social distancing, masks, everything that government or experts ask us to do. And then it looks to me that these aspects is more or less satisfied. But now, after 6 or 7 weeks, I don't know even for how long this lasts, people have other needs to satisfy. And we have to think also about them.
Sorry, Lars, you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I don't think, I mean, the question is, what is a fundamental need today? Isn't self-fulfillment basically a fundamental need as well? So I'm wondering if we're flipping that pyramid upside down, or if we're running through the stairs up up and down on a daily basis, making it harder for brands to know exactly when to target people and how to speak to people at the moment. In Sweden, it's a very different situation from what you're experiencing, because Swedes were like seen as the rebels, people who think they can rebel against the virus, right? So we're out and about and we eat at restaurants and stuff like that. Of course, our society is also upside down in many ways, but we're not experiencing the same thing that you are experiencing. So that's really interesting, a very interesting and different experience that we're having.
Yeah, and I mean, the Serbs, Lars, so you know, just spend the long Easter week, Orthodox Easter weekend in lockdown.
Yeah,
yeah.
84 hours. So
leave their home. So it is very, very different.
Yeah, and if I can add, we did 3 waves of our public opinion poll, asked people about their worries, about behavior, about what they adopted during this period, and we could see after first 15 days, 2 weeks, a lot of things changed. So people started wearing masks, stopped shaking hands, didn't go out, took all sanitary measures. So much of those changed. Also, people became aware of the virus and how dangerous this can be for themselves and the family, and they became much more worried about it. But I would say it's not a panic, it's a kind of healthy worry. But after next 15 days, we did a 3rd wave and nothing changed. So all the numbers were much more or less the same as in the 2nd wave. So people adopted.
That's interesting.
Changed their behavior. People are aware of that. They have some thoughts about that, feelings, but they adapted very quickly. My feeling is that brands still didn't adapt that quickly, and I will close for now.
Okay, no, I'd like to bring Harjot into the conversation, because Harj, you know, you're very much part of the global McCann Truth Central team, our global intelligence unit, for those people who don't know it, and we are doing an ongoing wave of research globally to track global attitudes and behaviors towards COVID-19. And in the latest study, the figure, which I still find incredible, is 59% of respondents are saying they are considering what really matters to them during this time where we're all in lockdown, right? In Western Europe, which is still the epicenter of the pandemic, it's in the 60+ percentile. And in the UK, 74% of consumers are considering what really matters in life. So, Harj, let me turn to you. What are the implications for brands here when people are fundamentally rethinking their lives?
Right. I just want to let's try to answer this in what's the context that's informing this kind of behavior, and therefore what's the opportunity and the action. So the context is it's really not really a commercial context. I think it's a very human context. This will make sense to everyone who's attending the call and who's on this in this conversation actively engaged, that every time as human beings we feel that we've lost control or we don't have any agency in determining what the outcome is or what's happening around us, we do retreat to the very fundamental values that inform us. You retreat when you feel a loss of control. This is not advertising, this is just human understanding. And I think it's quite interesting that if you now lay on the data and the cultural context, countries like the UK, countries like Europe, where for the longest time we've had agency and control in determining our outcome, and we've felt and enjoyed a greater sense of freedom and control over what goes on, being more actively engaged in informing policy at the highest level on how our lives should be lived and what governments can and cannot do and institutions should and shouldn't do, and having a say in it. I think the sense of loss of control in societies like that is even more palpable because you feel even more isolated and you've lost control. So I think the understanding of Maslow's hierarchy being inverted is very astute because it's happening the world over, but I would say in markets like China or, I don't know, North Korea, I don't think they would have a sense of loss of control to the extent you would in societies like ours, let's say. Right. That's one part we're thinking about. The second thing is, as that happens, the implication for brands is to not kind of go back to an MBA textbook, but I like to think about what's true in life is true in business. When you're in a moment of crisis, you have to strike a balance between being available and being valuable at the same time. And I think brands have to think about that as well, like to be available and being valuable. And so there isn't a one size fits all for every brand to say, here's how you can strike the balance between being available and valuable. So that's part one. And the second thing is, I think you also have to be very sensitive to how people are feeling. So this idea about them going back to the fundamentals to a greater extent in the UK, you can't be distracting people from that. Now is the time to also be present and be mindful of your presence at the same time. So I think those are two really broad-based principles by which brands should be thinking about any action. Are these actions and messages allowing me to be available and valuable at the same time? Are these messages and actions, in such a way that they assert my presence, but in a kind of a mindful and sensitive way as well? So that's really, I think, the way we should be thinking about it.
It's interesting. Katja, do you want to come in on that?
I just wanted to say that for me it was interesting. I was reading one of those Truth Central studies reports, and it's like after this third wave, and at one point we have like we have this statement that people actually expect brands to be more empathetic and more human, and tackle, these things like they wish brands to be spreading more joy and laughter from there, and maybe even to intervene and lessen the bring people together, fight the stereotypes and things like that. But this is kind of a for me, this is a signal what how people actually feel. Okay, we had this panic part, and okay, in most of the countries we started adapting to this new state and starting to live this new normal life, and we expected all the brands that could act like a public service or help government to help us deal with this acute pain and feelings we have. This is one thing, but now seeing that people actually expect something more, which is like a different kind of a world, where brands should have a very, very significant role. And this is also one part of this truth that the brands should, in the future, probably partner with governments and public services and things like that, which is one thing. But on the other hand, I think that this finding balance between available and valuable that Harj mentioned, I think this part is very, very important, especially when thinking about these expectations, which are like a more humane world, actually, where the brands are so active.
Yeah,
this is just
I think one thing on that is, like, if you look at any of our clients who are on this call, or other people that might be listening into this, is if you're running a brand or running a business or marketing in the marketing business, I think it's a good time to also take a step back and look at your own values of the brand and say, to what degree have we constructed the narrative of the brand that starts from a very fundamental human need first? So if people are in that space now where the 4 or 5 human needs of love, connection, purpose, discovery, bonding, community, those things, which are very things that unite that define the human condition, if that's what the only thing we all have in common right now, if that's so powerful, which it is, how many of us are going to have to really go back and say, let's start our brand narrative from a very fundamental human need based point of origin first? Because over time, we've assumed that is understood. financial services are guilty of it. You assume that people understand that we're of course going to protect them and love them and help. Of course, that's hygiene. Now let's talk about slightly more higher order. What does this say about you and your image and your aspiration? And what does flashing this credit card have to say about how you feel about the world and how you see yourself? I think it's a moment to again go back and say, if people are reinvestigating what's most fundamental to them, I think we'd be tone deaf to not do that on our own end and say, how should we re-architect our stories from a human first narrative, from a fundamental narrative?
How do we redefine valuable, right?
Yeah, I think we have to rethink our stories. So I think we really have to actively rethink what's our narrative, and we have to do that urgently. Like switching off the lights and going off air is not the solution. Rethinking your narrative and going back out there with a narrative that's genuinely meaningful and valuable, and people feel, you're seeing the world like I am. That's more important right now.
Nice.
But can I ask something? Do you guys think that this means that people will care more about brands in the future? Because we all know that people in general don't give a shit about brands.
Yeah, I think if you care about the things that people care about, they will. But we also know now that people are increasingly low on patience. I think to think that we're going to have massive amounts of second chances, I think that would be a bit foolhardy at this time. I think we've got to get it right quickly. So we have to apply precision, wisdom, intuition, rigor, all of that to architect stories that make sense to people, that create instant empathy, that we see the world from where you see it, and we agree on a values basis, and let's now re-engage. I think that's really important right now.
Yeah, no, I think we talked last week with the creative community on the panel, and they talked about, the role of brands is to be three things today during coronavirus, which is humble. You need to talk with a sense of humility because people, to your point, Lars, have other things to think about other than brands. You need to be empathetic. You need to understand your consumer and where they are today. And thirdly, useful. I prefer valuable, Harj, so thank you. I'll change it.
Yeah.
But
same sentiment.
No, I would proffer that usefulness will be paramount for the next X period of time as we go through the second, third, fourth wave of this. So, Predrag, did you want to come in? You were hopping.
I was just remembering, and Katja probably remembers also, because we were doing together the campaign for our big client, and there were several options for the campaign, and one of them had the CSR component in it. It was completely different, but there was a CSR component, and I was really doubtful about that campaign, looking at as a professional, but the reaction of the people was really amazing. That was the best evaluate campaign we ever had in Ipsos here. And that moment when the brand is giving back something to the community, and it was kind of ecological kind of stuff, was evaluated in a great manner. Although ecology is not a huge thing in Serbia yet, so we have much more problems, and we're thinking about much down to ground problems than the ecology. It's not like in the Western world, but that moment when in the campaign there was an obvious sign that the brand will give back something to the community, the reactions were amazing. So maybe it works, and if you find a way to give back something to people or help people overcome this period, or be, as you said, useful, I think it might work. But the problem is that we really need to understand people at this point of time. Right. It's quite different. Circumstances are different. People are behaving different. People have, as I said, their needs, but they're trying to find a way to satisfy them in a different way.
Let's talk about that, because we've all been in lockdown for roughly 6 weeks, depending on where we are in Europe. Okay. Unless you're in Stockholm, but I'll come on to Sweden because it's interesting, right? So we talk about changing behaviors. We've all had to slip into what we're all calling e-living, right? We're e-working, our kids are e-learning, we're e-commercing, if that's even English. And we're actually even e-socializing, e-drinking, and through house party, right? And I read a McKinsey report last week that I shared with Lars that said that 33% of Swedes have now started grocery shopping online for the first time. So even in one of the most digitally advanced countries on the planet, consumer purchasing behavior is fundamentally changing. And I think we can all agree that that's not gonna go back. So Lars, I ask you to kick us off on this one. In your opinion, what do brands have to do to change? And I think of retail brands, obviously, but any brand in this new world of an e-economy.
Yes, I guess most retail brands can take a lot of cues from the online, for instance, online pharmacy actors, the home delivery, like grocery home delivery, all of these kind of services. And you're absolutely right. We see an increase in e-commerce in all different segments, which is really interesting. However, I think it's also interesting to ponder on the fact that if you don't have everything together, for instance, we have clients that have products under development, services under development. And the question is, should they go out now and market that because it's a good situation, the window is open? Or is it a big risk for them to have a quick and hard fall and have it difficult to recover from that? That's also a question right now for us. But you're absolutely right. I mean, and also we discussed this earlier, that we see like e-commerce platforms. Everything is an e-commerce platform at the moment. Harjot discussed this just prior to this meeting, which is really interesting as well. We can buy things everywhere right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Harj, let's talk about that. So it's a slight segue from retailers fundamentally changing their customer journey map, but it's also will have implications for media. So for those who have joined, what we were talking about before we went live is how the change will need to change digital media investments. And as Lars said, do we need to be going to Google to search for something when we can go straight to Amazon or L'Oreal.com or whatever?
Yeah. So I think it's just, again, I feel like it's great to just remind ourselves that the answers lie in common sense and intuition, really, that rather than science in this world, because we're talking about human behavior. I think it's very simple. If we want to change behavior and get people to do something more and more effectively, it's easier to integrate with the way they've already started thinking and acting versus getting them to, go to 3 other places when right now they don't have the time. So what we know is, I think there's the vast amounts of progress that's been made in social media platforms and e-commerce platforms that aren't quite the way they were when we started, like 2008, I think. When did Facebook start? 2006?
Yeah.
Whenever.
2007.
I mean, the Facebook of 2007 and the Facebook of 2020 is very different. The Instagram of 2011 and 2020 is very different. So I think the point that we have to make is, as people get more comfortable and as social media platforms have kind of advanced, so we should really be tapping into that. And we think brands we're going to see a shift in investment, because investment in moments like this, when businesses are under even more pressure to deliver return on investment quickly and effectively, they're going to go where the fish are. They're going to go where there's the least resistance to change, where the consumer is closest to the buying funnel or the purchase funnel, whatever we want to call it. The fact is, 2 things happen right now. People rely on other people's opinions and reviews and peer groups, very important. We know that from influence. And the second thing is, people are going to go to places where you are already able to see how, what the options and choices are. So if you can do everything in one space, you'll be there. So on Instagram now, which used to be just about photos, it's now become an e-commerce platform. Every social media platform is soon becoming an e-commerce platform. And if people are becoming more digitally fluent, to Lars's point, that everyone's now, even whatever barriers were left, if those have also been overcome, where people by sheer force of will and sheer force of the circumstance have now had to become more digitally literate and fluent, then they're already there. So search engines now have to create a sense of value for themselves that's going to have to look different than what it was. Because if I'm looking to buy, I don't know, I guess a new kitchen instrument, I would rather search for it on Instagram or on Facebook or on Amazon. Why would I go on Google?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I could get reviews right there. I could get real photos right there. I could get real people's experiences. So I think we're going to see that happening.
Right. And okay, so how do traditional brands, and we have a lot of retailers within McCann, the group, we have a lot of FMCG brands that live or die at retail. So how do retailers change to this? Other than shut down their stores and all advertise on Instagram. I don't think that's an option.
No. It's a very good question. In fact, when we presented our recent, at a retail summit just before this whole lockdown happened, we were in Prague presenting at the World Retail Summit. This was precisely one of the questions that came up. And we have so much insight and data to back up the fact that we have to start thinking about it as not sales per square foot, but experience per square foot. Because that's the value enhancement that happens at retail. So if you're going to provide me the same product I can buy on Amazon, there's no sense for me to you're right. So it's experience per square foot, and it's a bigger conversation. I don't think we have the time to go specifically into that, but I think retail has to be more, retail has to be more creative in tapping into what the experience deliveries are that are unmet versus the basic availability. They have to be valuable, not available. Let's just put it that way.
Interesting. Katja, from a local Serbian perspective?
I'm just now listening and thinking about, all the time I'm thinking about how quickly some of the brands, or not even the brands, some services quickly adapted to this new situation. And it was a very nice surprise for, I think, all of us. In Serbia, there is the institution of green market. I don't know if you are aware, and the green markets were closed about 3 weeks ago or something like that. And in 10 days, a new platform was built up for home delivery, where small producers from all over Serbia could distribute you to your doorstep. Whatever, fresh white cheese, or spring onions, or whatever you need. Now they're going to reopen the green markets, and I'm just thinking about how it will influence this part. Will they maybe keep this delivery service as something completely new for them? This is it's like a family farm. Very far away from Belgrade, that produces something fresh, and now they started and they are using Facebook. That's what I wanted to say, like a platform, and that's where you leave comments and everything else, and it completely changed, I think, the perspective on this part of groceries. And I don't know how long will it stay with us, and how will it influence this conventional delivery, retail, and anyway, this fresh products delivery, because this was not a habit in Serbia, I must say. Maybe the only similar thing we have with Sweden, because we're not buying fresh groceries online, and we don't do that. So this is, the habits change with, with the changed needs. So it's and we're very, very fast in adapt. That's what I want.
If I can add, just one of my friends, she's young urban lady. I saw her tweet today saying, I ordered some fresh vegetables yesterday, and wow, they delivered this to me this morning. So people are still, they have a lot of concerns when it comes to the e-commerce in Serbia, but I think this is a good time to push this. And one of our clients, a retailer, told me that they had 100,000 new profiles opened in their e-commerce shop during the crisis. So, people, when they do not have choice, they're forced to, jump in the water, and they're trying to do something. Although still, we know from many UX studies that we did before the crisis, they have a lot of concerns. And when they pay, they want immediate confirmation that payment went correctly. you know, and that's why they still have concerns, but they're now pushed into it and they're trying. So 100,000 new profiles is something really big. Also, when it comes to the social media, Facebook and Instagram, yes, advertising is important, but I think also this kind of logistic or technical communication is also important. And people are not willing to write emails. They also want immediate contact with someone. We know that because we have online panel. We're not getting emails anymore. People are writing to us, Facebook Messenger. I mean, they're trying to find ways to directly communicate with someone and to get the immediate answer. Because when you're writing mail, you're writing to some office at They don't care about that. They just want personal contact and they want immediate answer. And that's also an important thing that we have to think about.
It's interesting because I'll just bring in Vera, who asked a question on this, and maybe to you, Lars. It's speaking about changing consumer behavior from online to offline literally overnight. What about our feelings? Online is no fun. It's only convenient.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, because when we look at these kind of services in Sweden, we know that people actually like to go shopping for groceries. So, I mean, when things are opening up again, I'm sure that we will also see people be happy about going back to the stores to be able to pick things from the shelves and stuff like that, smell things and see things and all those kinds of things. I think it's a really, really good question. And I don't think that e-commerce is sort of making the old type of retail obsolete in any kind of way, but obviously it will be many more consumers will do both from now on. I'm absolutely sure.
I think we really crave that connection. I have a feeling, I might be alone in this a little bit, to go on a limb, but I think we're going to see a surge in physical retail because people are going to want to get out and actually engage in the experience. And I think we're going to see a real spike in just the old way of shopping again, because we're missing that.
So Harj, okay guys, what is the role of brands in that, the re-emergence as we come out of hibernation? So, you know, we know from McCann Truth Central studies that 81% of the world believes that brands have the power to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Out of our collective lockdown will for sure be a better place. What is the role of brands then?
You know, I read something.
Are we cautioning? You know, what is the responsibility of a brand then?
Well, I read something really smart that someone wrote early this morning. I wish I'd written it, and it was so articulate. And it says that the opportunity for brands is to be part of the recovery, not a response to the recovery. No, you know, so I think it's really that, like, we can't wait for people to recover and be there to respond to it and I don't know, commercialize that response, or. But I think to be able to.
Harj, sorry, how does a brand? I love that, be part of the recovery, not respond to it. I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
But how does a brand navigate this tough line between helping people recover and taking advantage of that, be seen to be useful, helpful, valuable, whatever word we want to use?
Right. I think it will happen. It's an outcome. You lead with intention. That's an outcome. If you are seen as someone, as a brand that has not been tone deaf, that has been in step, if not even anticipatory about how people are feeling, if people are rethinking about what's really important and retreating to the fundamentals, for you to be able to take that sense of humility and understanding and be able to meet them there, that's step one. The second thing is, as people coming out of it, and we're mapping this on a very regular basis. Every 2 weeks, we're seeing how the fundamental human needs of connection, love, discovery, purpose, how they're manifesting and how it's changing. If we keep in step with that, so people want brands to have deeper actions, deeper points of view, and a sense of empathy that's instant. So it's not just a one recipe thing. It's a multi-layered experiences, people feeling many levels of different kinds of emotion. Old habits are changing, new habits are coming through. It's not linear. So brands have to be agile at the same way, and just know there are 3 rules. What people are feeling, make that integral to the way you tell your story. That's the first thing. The second thing, what people are seeking, be generous enough to offer that immediately without too much of a song and dance, just to be there. And the third thing is to also not be tone deaf, is to be mindful of your presence and not feel like you have all the answers, and just be okay, authentic response to say, we're all going through this together, guys.
Right.
Let's just help each other walk through this, because we want to be there for you on the other side. Just we like for this to continue. So I think last thing I want to say is you better than people at this point. And so unless it makes complete sense for you to turn off the lights, don't do that.
Yeah.
Because that's also not.
In fact, Predrag wrote exactly an article on this last week, Predrag, in terms of keeping communicating, and the I guess, forgive me, Predrag, but it's the P&G model, and they've been very vocal in the last few weeks. It helps if you sell sanitary and household cleaning products for a living, but they are saying we will overspend, we will up our spending in this time of crisis.
Just one thing I want to add. I wrote this down. I was in a call yesterday, and this very, very experienced, she's a psychologist, and she also advises companies and everyone. She's speaking at this thing, and she said, in a state of trauma crisis, we advise people to over-communicate. And I think the main thing for brands is to also understand you over-communicate, and there are two things: your intentions as a leader and asking about the impact of your intentions on a proactive, frequent basis. So if you just kind of take that back to brands, to how do you over-communicate as a brand, as a leader, your intentions, and also check what the impact of your intentions is so that you can have a two-way dialogue. I think it's a good thing to think about.
I mean, people want to stay in touch.
Yeah.
With other people. They want to stay in touch with the brands as well. I mean, brands just can't disappear. And I think, now people are a bit more sensitive. They're, because of the emotional conditions they're in, and they're trying to find answers, and they want some kind of certainty. That's, I think, very important word. And I think they will notice who is present and who is not. I think it's something that they're capable of noticing, especially because now they moved back to some traditional media, and the trust they have, for example, in TV at this point of time is very high in Serbia, much higher than in social media, probably because of the fake news and all the stuff that. So in this time, I think just it's important to be in mind of customers, to be there for them, to be, as you said, useful, to be social responsible or responsible to the community, and to talk to people. People need to talk. We are calling people that we didn't talk with for months now, because we want to check if they're safe, if everything is okay with them. So we are trying to, we are showing some kind of empathy, and brands could or should show also some signs of empathy. Yeah. So I think it's important not just to be quiet and wait. We just can't wait, because this is new reality. It will not be back in the I don't know, February in a month. No, this will be a kind of permanent condition, and it will evolve and change, but we will not be back in 2019 or beginning of the 2020. This is new reality, and we have to act, we have to adapt, we have to learn quickly, and we have to talk to people. To understand them, and then to provide something to them. You need to understand them.
I just wanted to add something when you were talking about how people need to stay in touch and to have those. It's like a need, we all and people all have need to lead as normal life as possible, and brands are part of their normal life. It's not normal, when you don't have some of those contacts or even some of those brands, don't you think? It's a bit strange. So like Peter said, we cannot pretend like this is not happening, and in 3 months time, when everything is when we have a vaccine, everything will be super fine, and some of those brands that went dark just pop up with I don't know what will they say. That's the thing I'm very interested in. What will they say when they activate and not being there for the past 3 months and not being part of this new normal life?
I think that's the first time we've heard the new normal phrase, Katja, so thank you. Just one thing that I was just thinking about as you were talking is actually the role of celebrity. I guess I want to talk a little bit about Kim Kardashian, right? Sorry. But
of course, you always want to talk about Kim Kardashian.
The world, for the last 10 years, we've all gone on the celebrity bandwagon, whether it's Kim Kardashian or whether it's Ronaldo or maybe it's Joe Exotic and Tiger King now. But really, the new heroes of today are doctors and nurses. I mean, we all stand up either once a week or once a night, depending on which country we're in, and applaud them. We'll do so tonight in the UK. And my wife is a nurse, and she'll be on a ward, so she won't hear us clapping. Science, knowledge are the new cool. So a lot of clients, a lot of our brand strategies will have celebrity endorsements or have, tap into this celebrity culture. Does that change in this new normal? Thank you, Katja. Lars, what do you think is?
Yeah, well, perhaps, like you say, we might see new superstars, but also I think, Kim Kardashian is doing a fabulous job entertaining people, making people happy, which is also a very, very meaningful role today. So, she's also doing her part in that sense. I'm absolutely serious about that, by the way.
Yeah, she didn't go dark.
Oh, okay. I really didn't want to talk about Kim Kardashian. That's the sad thing. But I wanted to talk about the role of celebrity in communications.
I think celebrities will have, an even more important one. What's interesting now is that you see celebrities, for instance, musicians, like opening up, feeling more like regular human beings. You see them having their sort of performing concerts in their living rooms, far from perfect performances. Famous guitarists doing guitar lessons over Teams, stuff like that. So I think we're actually perhaps coming closer to celebrities, and I don't think that will make them less interesting and less relevant. Quite the contrary, actually.
At least not all of them. I think the fundamental premise of celebrity is popularity. So it's like you have popularity at scale. That turns into some level of adoration and obsession, but it's like popularity is the fundamental premise of any celebrity. So I think the smartest celebrities know how to remain popular, and popular is about tapping into populist opinion and populist values. So if you can flex with what's meaningful to people today, then you will remain relevant. So I think any celebrity, to Lars's point, which I think is brilliant, that if you're kind of opening up to free concerts and you can get to learn how to sing from Taylor Swift or play the piano from, I don't know, Lady Gaga for free, that's going to go a long way in creating your populist image, because that's what is meaningful today. And if tomorrow we get to a point where we want you to be a complete freak and entertain us and jump from rooftops and be completely elusive and unapproachable, then you do that. But I think it's really, the smart ones are tapped into popular opinion.
Anecdotally, I'm trying to learn to slide via TikTok. And I'm following this 18-year-old girl who's a very good teacher. She has 50 million followers on TikTok, guys.
Yeah.
It's a slide. That's it. It's incredible. All right, we've got 10 minutes to go, and we should give people time. So let me just sort of try and wrap this up by going to you all individually and ask you a question. We advise clients all the time. So if you're advising a brand guardian, what is the one thing, or maybe two things, you would advise them as they re-engage perhaps with consumers in a post-pandemic world? Who wants to kick this off?
I can tell two very short sentences. Don't be quiet and learn about consumers. Consumers now are not the same as consumers 2 months ago.
Nice.
I would maybe say that they are not the same, and I think that they're adapting new habits rather quickly, surprisingly quickly. So let's not underestimate the power of new things that we might maybe offer them, or maybe help them change their habits, or just meet these new things that are just evolving like from week to week. Thing.
Yeah, I agree with both of you, and I think it's important to be quick, but perhaps not too quick. You know, it's easy also to jump to conclusions very fast now, and everyone seems to have a crystal ball knowing what will happen post COVID-19, etc.
Yeah.
So redefining your whole business is perhaps not the best thing to do before you have actually analyzed what kind of role you can play to people.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Harj.
I think just to build on that, two things I would add are, I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that people will learn new habits, and they've changed. So I think one of the ways in which people are changing and will change or continue to is they are going to get more comfortable and more creative at the same time, being able to do more with less, and which actually makes them more resourceful. So I think people are going to question whether you're worth paying for. Whether it's really important. So I think that just don't be tone deaf. And I think brands have to really understand that people will learn to make do with less. So the importance of being valuable and useful, I bring back that idea about focus on what will make you valuable in the new ecosystem. And I think the other part is you just can't. In the past, it's been an expectation that brands have internalized that they have to be the ones with the answers. And I don't think that's an expectation now. So it's okay to be able to find answers together and be in a conversation versus saying, here's what we think you need, here's what we think is best, here's why we think it's best, and here's why not buying us is just a real missed opportunity for you. So I think we've just got to flip that power distance dynamic and get a little more on an even footing.
I think this is very important, what you said. Just this last thing, I think it's very important, and I think it can be encouraging for some of the clients, of our clients, that are scared or at least not sure how to do things. So meeting these people somewhere in between and maybe going through this together, I think it's a very nice argument for some of our clients to start doing something.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, we're gonna wrap this up. So can I thank you hugely for your time? Harjot, Predrag, Lars, Katja, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we can all agree it's about finding your brands need to find their meaningful role in the new normal, right? And whether that's a meaningful role, a valuable role, a useful role, however we want to term it, this is critical. We call it, as McCann, we call it a meaningful role, and it's even more important to stress test it, to research it, to Predrag and Lars's point about understanding your consumer and where the brand fits in, right? You know, for me, the coronavirus is at a macro global level taught us that we have a lot less control over our lives than we thought we had or that we like, right? None of us like being in this forced lockdown, but consumers have control over something, and that's over their purchase power, right? Consumers have, they're changing their habits. They've become both reliant upon and used to new technology in how they buy and how they interact with brands. And we know that consumers, 81% of consumers, believe brands have the power to make the world a better place. So it is beholden, I believe, on brands. And I loved what you said, Harj, earlier about brands being part of the recovery, and not a reaction to consumers once they've recovered. You know, brands need to embrace the change, be sure that they are reflecting the current tone, be humble, be empathetic, be useful, be valuable. And you know, we're McCann, so we fundamentally believe this, that brands who have a truly meaningful role in people's lives will succeed. Thank you, panel, for your time. Thank you, those listening and talking. I've actually got a bunch of questions here. I'm so sorry they've only just come up and we're not going to get to them. I tell you what we will do. I will distribute these questions to the panelists, and we'll then publish the answers to the questions. And if you guys in the next sort of 4 minutes also want to pop down what you'd maybe like to talk about next for our next panel, please feel free to comment. Thank you so much for your time. Stay safe. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.